if you remember onto why I did not review this Halloween special from Foster's of last year, instead I reviewed the Blue episode instead, or the Boo episode instead, well, there's a reason for that. I really did not enjoy this episode. I'm just letting you out right now, other than me reviewing the good episodes, I'm also going to be reviewing the bad episodes, and for what has to come next month, you can really tell that I'm really in a really dreadful ride on reviewing one bad episode from this show. So anyway, Nightmare on Wilson Way is not really one of the best Halloween specials I've seen from Cartoon Network. And considering that this happened in the 5th season of the show, which premiered in 2007, I think it really goes to show onto why they made the Boo episode more of a Halloween episode, instead of just making an actual Halloween episode. So in the beginning of this episode, Mac is completely tied up because it can hurt his sugar rush situation while he goes high on sugar, and the fact that Blue is just trying to tie him up so that he doesn't get any candy during the night of Halloween. And as for Blue, well, he isn't going trick-or-treating, but he's about to scare someone with the classic prank of the peanut brittle prank. I really don't see this as a Halloween prank, but it's mostly a regular prank. And people say that this prank can go a little too far by scaring people to death, but the thing is, I don't mostly find that believable. I mean, it does mention that Blue has been doing this prank year after year, but at the same time, for what this episode is trying to do, you can actually relate to Blue in this episode. And I mostly say that in one of the episodes that I'm about to review in the future involving Blue being somewhat of a likable character. Now, without anyone to actually use the prank on, Blue decided to use the peanut brittle prank on Mr. Harriman. Mr. Harriman tries to open it, and he did, but then it pops out the spring stuff, or whatever you call it. Which actually just completely scares Mr. Harriman to death. Now, keep this in mind. I honestly think that the peanut brittle prank would never do this to anyone. I mean, they could give them close to a heart attack, well, but at the same time, but from the way that this episode does it, it really isn't really the case. So, with Mr. Harriman completely knocked out, Blue needs to find a way in order to have Mr. Harriman be around with other people so that people can actually see him going around during Halloween season. I would easily consider this lazy writing to see a character who is obviously knocked out completely going around the whole house, just acting asleep while the other characters just pretending to make him act like he's awake. It's honestly lazy writing if you actually think about it, since that people, especially Frankie, doesn't see the fact that Mr. Harriman's mouth doesn't move. So while everyone is going trick-or-treating, Blue just completely buries Mr. Harriman, which is actually kind of humorous. But then this leads to the second half of this episode that really affect this episode as a Halloween special. Mr. Harriman turned himself into a zombie, and throughout the second half of this episode, we get to see Blue encountering the other imaginary friends, who will sooner turn to zombies as well. If you see Madame Foster, which you can't see because the Cartoon Network logo is in the way, she turns into a zombie while more characters turn into zombies. And the episode continues off with the other characters turning into zombies while catching Blue and the other characters. This would have been a great way to make this episode entertaining for a Halloween episode, but the thing is, the biggest issue with this is the fact that it's all prank. Spoilers. But then again, if you watch this episode 13 years ago, you'll probably understand what this episode is trying to do. If you see the My Little Pony episode 28 Pranks Later, if I got that name correctly, where everyone pulls a really ruthless prank on Rainbow Dash, this is the same thing, except that this episode came out 9 years before that episode. Now look, if anyone's going to mention on the fact that the peanut butter prank is mostly childish, you need to understand that Blue doesn't age whatsoever. If there's one thing I have to accept the fact of Blue's character, especially his finalization, is the fact that he doesn't age whatsoever. Same goes to the other imaginary friends. And as mentioned as the peanut butter prank does, that he does year after year, it really, really crossed the line last year. Well, a lamp completely fell out from Blue's bedroom and completely hits on Wilt in the head. Now, the thing is, even though that they try to make this prank really over the top, they really miss the point that the peanut butter prank, isn't really a Halloween prank whatsoever. And since that Blue's just doing this during the Halloween season, it's mostly appropriate. Especially since that by this episode's knowledge of what they're trying to do for this episode only, is that Blue probably only did that prank during the Halloween season. So I actually see the other characters completely act nonchalantly and actually think that the peanut butter prank is really stupid and really ridiculous. I have no idea how to describe it. Especially since that we get to see Madame Foster and Frankie completely tripping over because of the whole prank, which isn't really something that Blue did to them. If he only did to Mac, surely it did not happen to the other characters. It just makes no sense on the fact that characters like them would easily go against Blue's prank, all because he completely used the peanut butter prank on one person, which leads to other people. I think they're trying to make this episode way too forced for being a 22-minute episode. And that's the sad thing. This is a 22-minute episode, and by this time, Foster's barely does 11-minute episodes when it comes to the ideas that they have. And for the second half of this episode, where we get to see other characters completely chasing Blue, it would have worked, except that the execution on what Blue did really is really forced. Because believe me when I say this, the ending of this episode really ruins my appreciation from this episode alone. Soon, when all the imaginary friends turn to zombies, including Blue's summer friends, Blue has no other choice but to get to Mac, who thought the entire episode was still tied up on Blue's bed. And the only way to stop the zombie attack is to have Mac be on the sugar rush. Yeah, a sugar rush. This is the second time we get to see Mac in the sugar rush, in his sugar rush attitude, which is actually a really great way to actually see him being in this personality state again. But the biggest issue is the fact that Blue only did this in order to stop the other zombies. Because after a while, he completely gets out of the angry mob of zombies, and I do say angry mob, Mr. Harriman completely takes Blue, and it was all a prank. Yeah. It was all a prank. This image was like 5 seconds before this image. I'm not kidding. This is honestly one of the cheapest ways to have a character be immediately cleaned up just in the time when Blue was about to escape. I understand, and the reasons onto why they did this prank is because they were getting sick and tired of the peanut butter prank that Blue has been doing year after year. It's not a Halloween prank. It's just an ordinary prank. And considering that this is the only prank that Blue does, this is nowhere near as bad as what Rainbow Dash did in the pranks that she pulled off in My Little Pony. So I honestly think that this is really hard to actually believe that Blue actually deserved all of this. Throughout the majority of this episode, Blue was tolerable in the fact that he was actually enjoyable. And it's honestly one of those well things. But at the same time, well, the other characters completely scold him since that he's still in trouble because he completely put Mac on a sugar rush. That's mostly on them since that they completely forced Blue to have Mac go on a sugar rush. Seriously, do you ever see an episode where the zombies or fake zombies completely put the blame on a character who had no other choice onto doing the only situation in order to stop the other zombies from escaping the building? I really have to actually think that this is the type of stuff that really makes the other characters really unlikable, and it makes the prank all the more stupider. Look, if any of you guys say that revenge pranks exist for a reason, may I remind you that what Blue did was just only a prank that is literally which is literally where you open a can and then a spring of something comes out. Look, I'm not saying that the prank, from my opinion, is not scary. I will admit that people have different opinions on this prank, but at the same time, it's not a Halloween prank. It's just an ordinary prank. And seeing Hellman just had to completely get everyone in order to scare Blue like this just doesn't usually work, which really affects this episode and the scenes and the bits that I've seen while Blue is just trying to run away from the other characters. I know there's so many opinions that are debatable on the episodes of Foster's Homes, especially the bad ones. But at the same time, I really think that this episode really goes to show on to why they really didn't make a Halloween episode after they released the season 1 episode where Blue turns into a white ghost. Well, not really an actual white ghost, but still. Because, honestly, the writing that Fosters do in the show, it can sometimes be very good, but at the same time, the mean spirit stuff will obviously get overshadowed. I honestly think that this is one of those times where people are just completely who enjoyed this episode, which I do agree with on the opinions on it, but for the way I see it, I honestly do not understand onto why they completely think that Blue deserved this. Yes, they completely despise Blue, but for someone who actually see most of the episodes recently on the character development and sometimes derailment, this is the episode where Blue doesn't get any derailment and his flanderization wasn't as ruthless. Believe me, even the bits where they actually threw a Scooby-Doo joke where they actually give something from behind and it reveals that the mummy is right behind them is funnier, but at the same time, it's completely ruined because of the ending alone. And besides, Mac completely being on a sugar rush in order to save Blue was literally the only option. And believe me, I honestly think that if anyone would call me on this, I will probably turn the argument on them. I really don't like the fact that this episode ends off where Blue just gets punished, all because of a prank that, even though that I don't find scary, was the only prank that he's done year after year, and the fact that the prank that he got from the other imaginary friends goes way too far. If there's one thing I actually enjoy in this episode is that during the credit sequence is while Mac actually wakes up after a sugar rush has weared off. And he completely fainted knowing that he actually thought that it was actually Wilt's arm that cut off. Wilt has been using that arm to scare people in front of the front door while handing out candy. And I actually found that a bit funny. But aside from that, this episode was really difficult for me to actually review. Well, from last year at least. At least this year, I managed to review it. But considering that this is a bad episode, which is a Halloween special, I really think I should stick to the Blue episode than this. I know some of you guys are not going to like my opinions, but this is one of the worst Halloween specials I've seen from any other cartoon or sitcom. I really think that this episode would have been much more better if it was written better instead of just having this forceful prank go against Blue, despite the fact that the prank that he did wasn't really that scary. Because if I was in this situation where I was in front of so many zombies and I'm completely surrounded, I pretty much know that none of this is real. I get that this is a cartoon, but if this happened in real life, I would probably put my foot down and actually try to fight off any of the fake zombies. Even if it's stupid, it's literally the only way to actually stop the prank from getting much worse. So yeah, I really did not like this episode. I give this episode a 4.5 out of 10. But I will say this though, this episode is better than the episode I'm going to be reviewing for next month. And believe me, what I have in store in November, you'll be very invested.